The Next Shelter Network presents an Appalachian Trail interview series, 2024 edition. This is a platform for hikers to share their hearts, minds, and experiences. These interviews are hosted by yours truly, Trevor Hendry, otherwise known as Bear. Now to the interview. Sweet. All right. And so we are live with Chris Bruder. Is that how you say it?
Right.
Oh,
Yep.
right. I got it again. Wow, I'm
You're
on a
good.
roll here. First, just want to thank you for your time. Thanks for joining me on this. And before I forget, you're doing social media as well. Is that correct?
I'm just doing a Facebook page for friends and family. I've decided not to bog myself down with too much responsibility there.
Okay,
So no.
gotcha. So we haven't talked much beforehand, which is great because there's endless possibilities here. So let's just kind of start with some of the basics here. Where are you from originally? Not now, but originally.
Well, originally and now, I'm from Houston, Texas, and the hiking culture is not anywhere down here. There is no hiking culture. Um,
Across the border
yeah,
there. Just-
for me, yeah, there's a lot of hiking across the board. But for me, it's I've been an outdoorsman all my life, and I've done a lot of camping. But it's always base camp stuff. Load the car up, head out, stay out, come back, and so never any long term hiking or anything like that. So for me to get exposed to that for the first time a while back was like, wow, this is great, and I loved it, um, and so this has been a dream of mine for 30 years, and I'd love to do it. At least I'm going to try to do it. So we'll see.
yeah. You said I'm sorry, I just had a thought and it just completely vanished from me. What was I gonna say? So you said, hold on, I'm going to shut my phone off here. It's still going. Okay. So you said originally from Houston. Now you mentioned the 30 years in between. In between, when was it? When you first got the idea of hiking the trail, or when
Yeah.
you what was the deal there?
Yeah. So I was in the military. I joined the Army um, when I was 18. And um, it was towards the end of basic training. And my bunkmate leaned over. He was on the top bunk. He leaned over. He was older. He was like 30 years old. He was like the oldest one in basic training. We were all young kids. And he leans over and goes, "Hey," he always called me young man. He goes, "Hey, young man, you want to hear about the time I hiked the Appalachian Trail?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so over the course of like 3 or 4 nights, he tells us this story of him through hiking the Appalachian Trail when he was like 20. And he had done the whole thing, uh, Novo. And it took him like 8 months, took him forever. But he just told us all of his trials and tribulations. And I'm like, wow, what a cool thing that is. And then, life starts to happen, and, you have kids and you have a career. And I had the same job. I stayed with the same company for 32 years, and there was just never an opportunity. And so to be able to um, take this opportunity now to actually do something that I've been thinking about for 30 years is pretty cool, or at least
Yeah,
try it anyway. So
yeah. So you mentioned the military. I might as well just call this the military channel at this point. I've interviewed so many people. I feel like every person I've interviewed, maybe exception for one, has been prior existing military. How long were you in for?
I was in for 3 years, 7 months, 24 days, and about 6 hours. And the military did exactly what what I needed it to do, and I was ready to get out. Um, and so, as opposed to staying in, which I certainly admire those guys that stick with it and stay in, and but I chose to not do that. Came back to Houston and started going back to school and trying to get my life in order. And so it was a great decision. I certainly don't regret it. I loved my time there. So
It's awesome. You mentioned children as well. Is that
yeah, I've got three kids. They're all grown now. My oldest is 31.
how
My
how is that? You're a young man.
No, I'm not that young. I did have kids a little early,
Yeah.
but yeah, my oldest is 31, and then I've got a 27 and a 23. So, um, so yeah, they're great, and they're all on their own and out doing their own thing. And so I hate that term empty nester, but that's what I am.
Gotcha. Is that a recent thing?
Yeah, well, my daughter lived with me for a little while, until a few years back, and then my son was still in college. And once he was out of college, and really the catalyst behind this is not necessarily the kids being out, but obviously that plays a part. But it's really the um, in July I left my 32-year career with the same company that I'd mentioned earlier, and so, I'm taking a year off, and before I jump into something else. Um, but that year is going to provide me this opportunity. So, as soon as I knew that was going to happen, I was like, okay, now's the time. And the
Yeah.
AT is calling.
Yeah, so I'm starting to notice a theme kind of in your life, at least from the outside looking in. There's this theme of continuity, right? It's
Yeah,
the same workplace for 30 something years. It's the same home, right? Maybe different
right,
house, but same area.
right.
What's that journey been like for you? Because a lot of people who find themselves on trail, um, a lot of folks are very nomadic, right? They like to travel, they go from place to place. It sounds like, well, it doesn't sound like you've been in Houston for a very long time.
Yeah.
What what's that been like? I mean, seeing how the culture of the city and I'm sure it's changed a lot, especially in recent years. What's that been like?
Yeah, I love Houston and I love Texas. And I've been family, I've got all my family's here. And so that's always been the anchor that's kept me coming back to Houston when I left for several years, and then just for the military service, and then coming back. It was all about coming back to family, and my sisters and my brother all live in and around Houston, and I live on the outskirts of Houston, and I love being by the coast. I spend a lot of time on the coast, and um, I just love it, and I always have. And it is a big, gigantic monster of a city, uh, which I don't go into very often nowadays.
Yeah,
Um, but it's a great place to live, and I've always loved it. So that's what keeps me coming back. But I like getting out of it too. I like I said, I go down to the coast a lot, and uh, I we go on trips all the time. Getting out of Houston because it's very flat. It's not a lot of, there's no mountains. I like, I love skiing. I like seeing snow every now and then.
uh,
So it's a cool place, and I've always enjoyed it. And it provided me a great living for a very long time. And so, that's a big reason to stick around.
absolutely. So you mentioned family, children. Are you married? Or you said what's?
Yeah, I'm married. We've been married for a few years now, and she's wonderful. And she's heavy duty into fitness, and she loves hiking also. She's not obviously she's not going on the trip with me this time around. She's still got her work that she's doing, and so that's going to be a tough part of it. But I think we're both prepared, and she understands how important this is for me, and she's a pretty good cheerleader for me, and so that's very very helpful. Without that understanding, the trip would be impossible, I think, or at least very very hard. So
Yeah. So by prepared, you mean just that kind of the mindset and encouragement from your wife and that
yeah,
like she supports you and she wants you to do this.
right, yeah, and she knows how important this is to me, and really, it was something I popped on her when I when there was some things that happened that allowed me to start thinking about, okay, is this possible to take this attempt of the AT?
Hmm.
And and as soon as it popped into my brain, obviously the first person I go to was her, and we talked about it, and of course you're apprehensive about
Yeah.
leaving your spouse for 5 6 months, and 4.5 months, or whatever it's going to be. And so that's a tough gig, and that was a prerequisite. She had to be okay with it, and she was, and she's very supportive of it. She knows how important it is of me for me, and it's been a dream of mine for a really long time. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
Now, it being a dream for a long time, it's probably very hard to, I guess, control that impulse, right? To just finally just go out there and do it. Now, it's when you have responsibility and you've got a career and you have all these things established in life, that also makes it very difficult to just go out there and do that. Can you describe that to me? Because um, I, I'm interested in the angst of that, the kind of anticipation that one could have after so many years of wanting to do something like this. What was
yeah,
that like for you through the years? Was it easy for you to compartmentalize it and put it off,
yeah,
or
yeah, for sure. I was writing, I was journaling not too long ago, and uh, I realized what I did. It was real, simple. Was I put that in the recesses of my mind and simply did not allow myself to think about it when it was impossible. You got young kids, you got a young career, and you're doing this and you're doing that, and I had some other things in my life that would pop up, and it was impossible to even think about it. And to be honest with you, it was one of those things I would think about every, once a decade. It would be like, oh yeah, that'd be cool, but immediately dismiss. Can't do that right now. And so, it was something that I was able to kind of compartmentalize and put back there, so I didn't anguish over it all the time or anything like that. But the second that opportunity was there, it was amazing how, bam, it was like, oh, hey, here we go. And so it was kind of interesting how that works in your brain, and or at least my brain anyway. And I was able to kind of get going on the thought, and once once I realized, okay, now's the time, then it's kind of hammer down. Let's figure this out, and let's get it. Let's try to make this attempt happen. So
yeah,
that's how it went down. But yeah, it's not the easiest thing to think about when you just can't do it. And so I just didn't, I guess. Weird.
it makes sense. I think there's a good lesson to be learned there. I think our culture nowadays preaches a lot of impulse, and there are a lot of folks, especially conveniently younger folks, who would say, "Oh yeah, just get up and do it. If you
Right.
want to do it, go ahead and do it." But certain people, different people want different things out of life, and you can't just if you want other things in life, like a family, and
Right.
some families can make it happen, but circumstantially, it differs a lot. Um, the most accomplished. through hiker in existence. Nimblewell Nomad was a optometrist, right? He was an I think that's what it was. He was a eye doctor um, until he retired at 60, and now he's done however many 30,000 miles on
Yeah.
trail. I think both things can be accomplished through, like you said, compartmentalization. So I'm happy, right? Because there's also that element of fortune, and you're blessed to be where you're at today with family and career, and now you can devote yourself to this. I'm happy that you've kind of arrived to this place where you can
Right.
indulge in this idea that was planted as a seed in your mind so many years ago.
Yeah. The other big deal there, Trevor, is that I watched my dad get sick in his late 50s. And, our, from the time he was about 55, 56, 57 years old, almost every time we talked, something would come up about his retirement and what he was going to do when he retired. And, that it killed me to see him get sick and not, lose his mobility and then eventually pass away pretty young, in his 60s and real young. And that just killed me, And so when this opportunity popped up, that was one of the first things that popped into my mind. It's like, okay, I can do this now. I have I have the physical ability to do this now. And man, I need to get on it because, not that I'm worried about dying or worried about getting sick or that, but who knows? It certainly could happen. And, I'm certainly aware of my mortality I'm only 56, but hey, what if? And so, man, I got the health now, and I better take that opportunity when because I can, you know.
Yeah,
So that's another big part of it too.
yeah. What is your baseline as far as your physical health? And um while we're on the topic, like, how are you
Um,
physically prepared, or are you
yeah,
preparing for this hike?
yeah, I'm physically prepared. So my career had me on my feet all day, every day for 30 years, and so that was, and I've stayed fit. Um, I've run a couple of marathons, and I know that doesn't translate well to the trail, but I do stay fit. And as a matter of fact, we signed up for the marathon in Houston this year, which was in January, um, and then I decided to hike the AT. And so I decided to go a little unconventional, and I hiked the half marathon um, with a 30-pound pack. um,
Nice.
yeah, yeah. So that was I did it in 3 hours and 48 minutes. So 13.1 miles or something, 13.1 miles. So I did pretty good. So the physical part of it is, I know, going to be tough, but I do think I'm ready, and I'll take it slow in the beginning. I keep hearing that coaching from anyone and everyone. It seems like it's like, take it slow in the beginning, and I'm definitely going to try to do that. Keep it around 10, 12 miles in the beginning, and and then I'll work my way up. So
Yeah. That's a tough one to discern, right? And while I do agree that it is good to start, don't come out of the gate flying. I
right,
think it's also very relative to your physical conditioning, right?
yeah,
Because it's kind of like I tell people, when you're in the gym, if you keep lifting the same weight, it's hard to increase muscle mass. So every
right,
once in a while, and you'll get there, and I'm sure you'll be able to discern when that time is to start ramping it up.
yeah.
Um,
I did a 16 miler about 2 weeks ago with a 30-pound pack, and I'm training with a 30-pound pack. Obviously, my pack will be a little lighter than that, but I am training with a 30-pound. But I'm flat landing it. So there's a dam near me, an earthen dam that I'm walking up and down, um, just to get my legs a little bit better in shape for the hills. But um, Yeah, we'll see, man. Well, I feel pretty good about my physical ability on that one. So,
Yeah.
uh, and then there's the whole mental thing, right? So
There is,
we
and
will.
and I'd like to get into that. But I guess, oh, sorry about that. But I guess before we do, it kind of covers the same line there. You we had one previous discussion, I guess, prior to scheduling the meeting here, and I guess in my notes here it says that you were 10 years sober. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's another big part. So, yeah, on July 20th, I'll celebrate 10 years of sobriety. And
Congrats. That's awesome.
yeah, thanks, man. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a tribute to that too. It's kind of like, hey, my life has been totally transformed by this thing that I was I was basically guided to do, and it totally changed my life in ginormous ways. And so, um, with the 10-year anniversary of that coming around, it's like, wow, I could hike the trail and celebrate 10 years while I'm out there, and that's kind of cool. So, um, yeah, that's a big part of it. Sobriety was one of the smarter decisions of my life, maybe the most important decision of my life, and my wife is totally supportive of that part of my life too, and I'm very blessed to have my kids and my friends in my life that are so important to uh, my recovery and my program, and that whole thing, that whole part of my life is really great. I love it, and um, it got me in touch with a God that I was having a hard time getting in touch with, and that God changed my life. So pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, that's wonderful. How do you feel that your sobriety will impact the way you approach your hike?
Mm. Yeah, so people are like, "Oh, well, are you going to go to meetings while you're out there on the trail?" I'm like, "Well, um, eh, you know, yeah, I will if I'm in town and there's a meeting." But you know what I did, and somebody suggested this to me, and I ran with it. I put a small patch on the back of my backpack, and it's the circle and triangle, and I did that for um, not to advertise that, hey, I'm sober. I did that to see if somebody else was. If they were hiking the trail along, with me, they could see that and say, hey, man, this guy's sober too. And all it takes is two people to have a meeting. And um, so I think there's that. Um, I think the things that I've learned in recovery, certainly my relationship with God, um, is I don't think this thing isn't even possible if it weren't for that. And so, I'm taking that faith out on the trail with me, and I don't know what to expect. I've done enough research and I've done enough training, and um, but I'm going to learn things along the way. I don't know everything, and um, I'll have God along with me, and I don't see how that could hurt. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, I
So,
agree. Now, socially, right? We hear a lot about how the Appalachian Trail is a big party trail, and that is the kind of the antithesis of sobriety. And how do you see yourself and I doubt you'll have any trouble with this, and there's been many before you that have come and done the trail and, had a wonderful experience being sober, but how do you view that, in terms of your approach socially with other people out there, and the environment around you? How are you gonna approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't hide from it. I don't hide from parties. I don't hide from other people drinking. It's part of society, and so I want to be a part of, not apart from. And I can certainly, I don't have a problem with that. And so, it's not like I'm white knuckling it all the time. It's just not the way it is. And so I'm very blessed to have, to be that way. And socially, I don't see myself going out and partying in town. I'm thinking that might get me to Catan if I'm capable of getting to Catan, I might get there a little earlier. And so, that's part of my that's certainly something I've thought about, and I've talked about with other people, that what that's going to look like, and uh, I'm not. It's not something that worries me. It's not something that I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope I'm going to be okay. Um, but it is something that, I hope I can be of service on the trail, and to whoever that is, who that if there's somebody out there who's wondering what sobriety looks like, or I, it's attraction, not promotion. I'm not going to run around promoting the fact that I'm sober, but if somebody brings it up, somebody brings it up, and it changed my life, and so I don't mind talking about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy for you, and again, congrats on almost 10 years. My wife, I think she's coming up on her 10 year as well. So
Congratulations to
it's a
her. That's
beautiful
great.
thing. Yep. So as far as the mindset, right? We talked about relating it to your experiences kind of on that road leading up to this trail. Once we're out there, what's your approach in terms of your determination? Do you find yourself um wanting to do this trail above all things and won't quit? You have a strong resolve. Do you find
Yeah.
yourself in kind of the middle camp where it's like, all right, well, I'd like to do it, as long as I'm having fun. Where are you at on that spectrum there?
Um, I'm definitely dying to complete it. Man, I would love that, and um, I am very, uh, generally speaking, I've been goal driven my whole life, and this idea of doing hard things, uh, you know, that's been good for me my whole life. Every single time I've done hard things, I come out of it better, and better mentally. Of course, something like this, there's in some ways I'll be better physically. I might be beat up quite a bit, and I know that. But yeah, I'm very, very, very determined. I and I'm determined to do it, and I'm not going to take forever. I don't want to take forever. I'd like to get going, and I was telling my wife yesterday. I was like, I don't want to wait around, man. I'm ready to go, and I got until March 10th. I got a couple more weeks to go, and I'm itching at making this attempt real. And so yeah, I'm very, very determined. Um, I think a lot of the people who know me well, um, know that about me, and I feel pretty good about having that dream. Whether I make it or not, I know I've got to be humble, and I've got to be right size. Um, but man, I want it, and I want it bad. And hopefully, you know, hopefully I'm climbing Katahdin sometime at the end of July, you know?
Yeah. Well, a deep determination and resolve will take you a long way on this trail. I, I think it's way better to be. I think it's better to fall on that side of the spectrum than the other. I'll say that if your goal is to finish, because things do get tough, right?
Yeah.
And um, you have to, I guess, find yourself. Not find yourself, but you've got to ultimately end up back on what your original purpose and determination was, which is to finish. A
Right.
lot of people talk about, uh, a lot of people say, well, Katahdin shouldn't be your goal. And while you do have to compartmentalize and break things down into smaller sections, and
Right.
really as small as like the next shelter or the next
Hmm.
town, um, you are ultimately chasing Katahdin in the end. And so I'm sure you'll do just fine.
This doing hard things thing for me
Mm,
is, I know that, making the decision to join the military, I joined the army. I had to leave life behind, and that was great for me. And you know, I went airborne, and that was hard, and it was great for me. And then, I chose a career that was not easy, and I did some hard things there, and that was great for me. And then, you know, I getting sober was certainly not the easiest thing in the world for me to do, and that was great for me. And and of course there's a bunch of other little things here and there, but in the end, this doing hard things is something that it it kind of it gets in my blood, where I know what the reward. I have an idea of what the reward could be,
yeah.
if I can complete it, if I can do it. And so, um, that's just, to me. I'm chasing that. I'm chasing the end result. And of course, there's a huge journey along the way where I'm going to learn all this stuff and go through all these hardships. And like you said, cutting it up into little sections. I just want to get to the next resupply. You know, um, I there's going to be a little bit of a break for me in Roanoke. I've got to go to a wedding in North Carolina,
Mm,
and my my brother-in-law lives in Roanoke, and so I'm going to be doing some. My wife's going to come to Roanoke and be there, and so I'll be doing some slack packing through the Roanoke area, which is the only area I've ever hiked the AT. Um, we hiked the Tinker's Cliffs section,
it's
and the
beautiful.
Dragon's Tooth section, and that's the only time I've ever been on the AT. Was there, and so that's the first goal, and
Yeah.
then Harper's Ferry, and then get me through the whites, and then it's I kind of cut it up into little sections, but man, I know it's going to be hard. I mean, just getting it through rainy days and rainy 3 days, and it's going to suck.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I get that part too, and there's some lesson to learn there too, right? Just getting through that 3 day suck. And, so I'm, I'm cool with that. I kind of embrace that part of it, because I know there's something on the other side, right? There's got to be something on the other side.
Yeah.
So that's a cool thing.
Yeah. You mentioned goals. You're a goal oriented person. Um, I guess we've talked through some tangible goals, right? Like, um, getting to Harper's Ferry or getting obviously finishing in trail. Are there any goals for yourself personally on this journey? Are there any things that you're wanting to take away from this experience?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, to be enlightened to what this whole thing is about. I've watched. I can't tell you how much stuff about the
Hmm.
trail and what it does, and
There's a
and
lot of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there. So I don't know what I'm going to find. I'm I'm sure that will be provided for me, and when it is, I'll know it. But I'm, you know, I'm, if I was 22 years old, I'd be like, hey, I'm going out there to find myself, to figure out who I am, but I'm not. I'm not 22. Um, and so finding myself is not really something I'm clamoring to do. Um, I, you know, when you change your life the way I did 10 years ago, you do a lot of searching and finding, and so I'm pretty comfortable there in some ways. In other ways, you know, um, my relationship with my higher power and God is something that can always needs to be worked on and get better. And being social with other people, I love being social. And so how's that going to work on the trail, and what does that look like? And am I going to be a little bit of a loner? I don't know how that works,
Hmm.
and we'll see, I guess.
Do you
Um,
lean do you lean one way or the other? Do you want to be ingratiated into a group, or do you want to have both a individual and group experience, or do you just wanna hike alone? Like, where do you lean towards right now,
y-
at least, not being out there?
yeah, yeah. Not having done it before, I definitely do not lean to hiking alone.
Mm,
The whole way. Or huge chunks. I don't mind hiking alone, and I don't mind being alone. But I do lean towards the social thing. But I understand that if that's not in the cards, it's not in the cards.
yeah.
And I suspect that it will be in the cards at some point and not be in the cards at other points. And so I'm kind of cool with either way. Um, you know, uh, there's this whole mission that I have in mind. Um, and I am focused on that. You hear, people talking about, get with people who are hiking the same pace you're hiking, and don't necessarily slow down or speed up for others, and that makes sense to me. Um, so plus, I do, in that Roanoke area, and while I'm running off to go to that wedding for 3 days, there's going to be, a break in my deal, and I am older, and so am I going to have to take more zeros? Am I going to have to take time off the trail, 2 days to let my body heal? I don't know the answer to that. So I'm just kind of going into it with a really open mind, and what happens happens. And I'm trying to minimize my expectation of what's going to happen, because I just don't know enough about it to, I've done, like I said, massive amounts of research, but I've never felt it before. I've never experienced it before. So I'm trying to keep my expectations at a minimum.
Yeah. I think that's the right approach. So, you get up to this area, right? Near the halfway point, near Fort Royal, that whole Shenandoah Valley region. Doing this crazy little experiment where make it up there. We'll sit down together. We'll do a live in person interview, and then I will show you a clip from this time that we're talking together right now. And right now, I'd like you to think about what you'd want to say to your future self at that point in your hike. If you could say one thing in particular, or maybe more than one thing, what would you say to your future self halfway through your journey?
That's a great question. I would say, first and foremost, bro, you've made it this far. Um, you got to keep going. Um, and you know, if you're hurting, or I know I got to listen to my body. And so there's a fine line there between listening to those signals that your body's trying to send you, and then also this tenacity, just to keep going and keep going. And so I would say keep going. Somebody gave me some really great advice, a former through hiker. um, he said he said that it's the job of the people, your loved ones, that you're going to be talking to while you're on the trail. I know, you can go home at any time. You know that you could leave the trail and go home, and that's never going to be a problem, and you know that in your head. Try to depend on those people and make sure that they know their job is to tell you to keep going. And I talked to my wife about that, and my daughter, and it having that push from home is going to be important. And so as far as what I tell myself, keep going. That's the most important thing, is keep going. There's going to be some hard stuff ahead, but it's okay. And you're going to make it. That's what I'd say to myself.
Like the 1,000 miles, dude.
Yeah, dude, you're 1,000 miles in.
Yeah,
You only got 1,000 more to go.
that's it.
So yeah, that's
Yeah,
crazy. By the way, that when you tell people it's 2,200 miles, they're like, "What?
yeah, it doesn't
What?"
register with them. Yeah,
No, it doesn't. So
yeah. Well, but then if you tell those same people, well, I'm just going to town every 3 or 4 days,
right,
and you just repeat that over and over and over and over again, eventually you'll get there, and you'll wonder, oh wow, we're here. It's
yeah,
because it's so trained into you.
yeah.
So
The other
you're
thing, and you know what? I tell myself one other thing.
Mhm.
Those things in your pack that you're holding on to because you're stubborn, let them go. Because I this whole process of bringing my pack weight down has been
Mm.
oh my goodness, and I'm just stubborn, man. I'm like, I can carry that, no, man, let it go. So that's another thing I'd probably tell myself.
Well, you're in the army, so that makes sense. Uh, well, it's crunch time here. We're a couple weeks away from the
Yeah,
hike. How are you feeling? What are your thoughts and feelings at this point in the game? Now that it's really starting to get real.
yeah, I'm ready. I want to go, and obviously there's a couple loose ends I gotta tie up. There's I got a to-do list that I got to get done, but my pack's totally ready. I've got all the stuff that I need. My travel's all figured out, and um, I all the little things are getting checked off, and so yeah, it's crunch time, man, and I welcome it because I've been obsessing about this thing for months now, and so I'm ready to just make the attempt, and you know at least, and if something happens and I get hurt or whatever, it, I can always come back to it, and I'm just ready to get going. So
Well, the excitement and anticipation exudes from you, and man, I want it for you too. Because I know this is something really important to you. This is something you've dreamed of, and I can't wait to see your dreams come to fruition this year. And yeah, I'm looking forward to staying in touch and talking to you once you're up this way in Northern Virginia. So
absolutely.
thank you, Chris, for your time. I really appreciate it. I know there's a lot of things you probably got to get in order right now, and I thank you for sharing that time with me. So
Thank you so much, Trevor. I really appreciate you inviting me.
absolutely, we'll talk soon, man.
All right, bud. Have a good one.
Same to you.
Bye bye.